If you've been following anything Genshin Impact related, you know that in the almost 4 years since this game has came out, there have been quite a lot of problems. Whether it is a lack of challenging content for veteran players, lack of overall story content, less than stellar in-game rewards for the game reaching certain milestones, or the sense of FOMO when dealing with events that aren't replayable for newer players, there's a lot to be upset with the current state of Genshin Impact. While the gameplay definitely deserves criticism regarding very little changes in the past 4 years, there is another topic that I wanted to bring up in relation to this game. And that is Genshin's problem with representation, or in this case, lack thereof. Hello, I'm Ayasuna and I make videos, more specifically art videos. But I will dabble into the world of drama when it comes to art-related topics, especially when it comes to representation because art is a representation of our reality. We use art all the time to represent our thoughts, feelings, and upbringing, whether it is where we are from or where we happen to wind up in our lives. Art is important, and the topic of representation is something that will always follow topics like this. For a bit of background, yes, I am Black. African American / Creole / Caribbean, it's a mix. I'm still looking into my family history. My heritage is something that is quite important to me. Black stories are often told in the sense of trauma, whether that is for educational reasons, although I do have my suspicions that some Hollywood companies do tend to exploit our history in order to get a quick buck, but that's beside the point. Our stories are very rarely told in references to games or similar media, and when they are told, they are often harmful stereotypes. While I clearly can't speak from experience regarding Indigenous or Pacific Islander issues, and I'm sure there's talented creators from those backgrounds who can offer more insight, a lot of the same follows when it comes to a history of colonization. A lot of our stories and traditions are lost because of these horrible tragedies. I have also played Genshin consistently for the first 2 years since launch. Though I have quit the game about a year or so ago before Fontaine came out, I've basically been playing off and on for the past year or so. While I don't actively play the game anymore, I still tend to watch trailers to see what's going on in the game. Nothing, and I mean nothing, erupted the community more than the teaser trailer for Natlan, the next nation in Teyvat. If you don't know, Natlan is supposed to represent Mesoamerica as well as Pacific Islander culture, though there are some references to West Africa and other nations prior to colonization. So it wasn't particularly surprising that there was backlash to the current roster for the new region. For such a diverse region, this lineup is leaving a lot to be desired, especially regarding skin color. Now, when I first watched the trailer, I didn't exactly know the names of the characters at the time. I just thought it was your standard run-of-the-mill Genshin trailer, including the new region. I thought the Pyro Archon looked great, and while she isn't a complete copy of Himiko from Honkai Impact 3rd or Honkai Star Rail, I still thought her design was nice and sporty, a change in pace compared to more recent Genshin designs. That was until I saw the list of names and inspiration from said names, and that's where the problem started. For instance, the new Pyro Archon's name is Maohika. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Her name is similar to that of a Maori goddess. A fire goddess to be more exact. In some versions of the mythology, she is the grandmother of Maui. Of course, going off her design, I had no idea that she was supposed to be based off of Maori culture. With Archons like Zhongli or Raiden Shogun, you can clearly tell that their regions are based off of China and Japan respectively. When it comes to Maohika, she didn't really live up to her name as far as references to her home region and the real-life influences the region is supposed to take after. This, of course, doesn't stop with her. It is a common trend with all of these new Natlan characters. For instance, Kachina is a reference to the Kachina dolls that the Hopi tribe created. The figurines represent the spiritual and physical world, and often serve as guides for the Hopi people. But again, you don't really see Hopi inspiration when it comes to Kachina's design. The same is true for Kinich. Kinich Ahau is also a Mayan deity. He is a sun god who is typically depicted as a middle-aged man, a lot different from his counterpart in Genshin Impact. As he represents the sun, it makes sense that he, as a deity, was worshipped when it came to the cycle of days in the Mayan region. One issue with a lot of these characters is that they don't share any of the features associated with the people from these respective cultures. In other words, they are whitewashed. The worst offender yet is of Oloron. Now, when I first saw this character, I didn't know his name. I thought he was your typical E-boy of Natlan. After all, there is at least one per region in Genshin, that is a given. I didn't realize his name was Oloron. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Japanese and Chinese version does have the correct name, and that the English version is simply a mistranslation, but again, I might be wrong here. Oloron is like a huge deal in Yoruba culture. They are essentially the creator of the universe and everything in it. While they have no set appearance or gender, a lot of people in Yoruba culture are obviously upset at this depiction. Yoruba beliefs are not just in West Africa, but across the whole African diaspora, as many Caribbean and Latin American folklore derive from the Yoruba culture and other West African cultures. There is nothing about this character that represents West African culture, and none that show reference to this deity. Not only that, his complexion is about as pale as the canvas that I'm working on. In a world like Genshin, you can have half dragons, half demons, and actual homunculi, as well as any sorts of anything in between, but when it comes to the actual concept of skin color, suddenly they miss the mark here. It is realistic to have a character with horns, scales, and even wings, but having a character from Yoruba or Andean culture have a darker skin tone is suddenly somehow unrealistic. Colorism is a very real problem in almost every facet of life as a person of color. It can even be very discriminatory in your own race or background. It isn't a woke concept to want your culture and religious beliefs to be respected for a game with a global audience. But these issues of colorism and race isn't a new thing when it comes to Genshin, or other Hoyoverse games for that matter. This was the case when Sumeru was announced, and again, a lot of the characters didn't seem to represent the cultural backgrounds that they were supposedly based off of. Like, it's really bad if the NPCs have a wider skin tone range than the actual playable characters. We know that these skin tones are possible within the game, so why can't the playable characters use them? One common trend that I've seen swirling online regarding Hoyoverse creative decisions is that since Hoyoverse is a Chinese company, that it doesn't inherently care about diversity. Or that the CN player base doesn't necessarily care about diversity. Now, I've heard or seen statements that go both ways on this topic, and I can't exactly verify one way or the other. It's harmful to cast all Chinese players the same, just like it is to cast all NA players the same. But there are games in the gacha space that have done a bit better of a job when it comes to diversity. These include Dislight and Reverse 1999. Both of which include characters that do resemble their native countries and respective cultural backgrounds. Outside of the gacha space, there are games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, as well as Final Fantasy XIV, which I think are doing better jobs when it comes to representation, though that's less obvious here, since these games aren't gacha like I mentioned. But this story gets away from the point that this is a problem that Hoyoverse has dealt with, and is continuing to deal with. In response to Hoyoverse's creative decisions, a lot of players decide to quote-unquote boycott the game, and not just Genshin, but also Zenless Zone Zero and Honkai Star Rail. Now, I put boycott in air quotes because from what I see online, a lot of the calls to boycott simply mean to just stop spending money on these games. Personally, I don't think that this is the most effective way to actually protest what you believe in. If you really want to send a message, you would stop playing these games altogether. At this point, you're just giving Hoyoverse more publicity, and any publicity is good publicity for a gaming company. I also think that Hoyoverse can and should do a better job when it comes to representing these cultures in a respectable manner. But boycotts usually have some sort of goal in mind, so I'm not really sure how far this particular one is going to succeed. Like, it's one thing to go completely free to play in these games, but if you're still gonna play and contribute to the active player base, then that's still gonna give Hoyoverse money. I believe at the time of me recording this, the 4.8 update for Genshin Impact will either just be coming out or has already been out for a few days. And that means the 5.0 update is under 2 months away at this point. People that are boycotting Hoyoverse's decisions here think that the patch update for 5.0 can and should be delayed, but that's simply just not realistic when you consider how game development works. The story of Natlan was probably already done in the early months of 2024, so they're probably working on Naya at this point. The promotional art for all of these Natlan characters is likely already done, at least for the characters that they revealed, though I'm sure there are going to be more in the future. While I would like to be wrong about how Hoyoverse works, if press is president, they don't exactly listen to players when it comes to issues like this. They ignore the issues regarding the Sumeru characters, and they'll likely ignore the issues here. They clearly care more about what the CN community thinks about their game, so they will plan their updates around them more than the rest of the player base. Redesigning and redoing the story part for Natlan just simply isn't realistic, and nothing that can be done within a matter of weeks. Natlan's likely been in production for many months at this point. Not to be a Debbie Downer here, I just think it's super unrealistic to look at these bigger corporations to fix issues regarding representation. Whether it's Eastern or Western corporations, a lot of them got a lot of things wrong when it came to proper representation that didn't feel like pandering. I don't think it should be up to them to tell our stories. All of the cultures that I mentioned today have a rich history and interesting stories to share with the world. And with the use of social media as well as the internet in general, there are many more ways to get our stories out there. Instead of looking to larger gaming companies to tell these stories, we should create our own games and series, and stories highlighting the positives and resiliencies of our culture, but hey, that's just my opinion. So, all in all, do I think you are a horrible person if you spent money on Hoyoverse games? No, I don't. I was a late spender in Genshin, and I still am in Honkai Star Rail. I haven't spent any money in Zenless Zone Zero. Might not spend money in that game, but again, I have spent money in Hoyoverse games before. Do I think that Hoyoverse will seriously overhaul these games to address these issues? Also no. I see no reason why the Natlan characters won't sell well even with this quote-unquote boycott. Even with the first Hoyoverse boycott, the game still managed to make hundreds upon millions of dollars, both with Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact. I can't imagine this boycott will hurt their game any more than they already were. Do I think you're a horrible person for playing and enjoying these characters as they come out? Again, no. Nobody should harass voice actors or players who just want to play the game and have a good time. While I definitely think that this is an important issue, I do think that there is a time and place on where to fight these types of battles. Like I said, instead of looking to these corporations for solutions, it's better to take it into your own hands if you want to see more representation. It's never been easier to make a story or create a game, and indie games are actually quite successful nowadays. But that's just my take. I'm interested in yours, so don't hesitate to leave a comment down below, as well as a like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you saw here today. I'm still a very small channel, so any support would go a long way in helping me continue my journey. I also have other socials where you can follow me on, which should be linked in the description. So for now, take care and stay tuned for more.